हसन के जिसने सिखलाई जंग गाजी को कि जिसने सिखलाई जंग गाजी को फख्र शेरे खुदा है मौला हसन फख्र शेरे खुदा है मौला हसन के हुस्न यूसुफ गवाही देता है कि हुस्न यूसुफ गवाही देता है हुस्न की इंतहा है मौला हसन हुस्न की इंतहा है मौला हसन सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद एक दफा फिर सलवात पढ़ दे मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद हुसैन बाट रहे हैं निजात ले जाओ हुसैन बाट रहे हैं निजात ले जाओ कि कुछ आंसुओं के वज़न कायनात ले जाओ हुसैन बाट रहे हैं निजात ले जाओ कि ये बला है ये मोजिज़े नुमा की बासी है ये बला है मोजिज़े नुमा की बस्ती है कि कफन में से के लपेटो हयात ले जाओ कुछ आंसुओं के वज़न कायनात ले जाओ हुसैन बाट रहे हैं निजात ले जाओ कि कहे गे मातमी हलकों से लोग महल महशर में कहेंगे मौत में हलकों से लोग महशर में हमें हुसैन, अरे हमें हुसैन की जन्नत में साथ ले जाओ। कुछ आंसुओं के वज़े कायनात ले जाओ। हुसैन बात रहे हैं निजात ले जाओ। कि कहेंगे मात में हलकों में लोग महशर में कि हमें हुसैन की जन्नत में साथ ले जाओ। कि नहीं करूँगा लहद में मैं इंतजार सहर, नहीं करूँगा लहद में मैं इंतजार सहर। के फरिश्तों के वो भला रात रात ले जाओ। के फरिश्तों के वो भला रात रात ले जाओ। कि कुछ आंसुओं के वज़े कायनात ले जाओ। हुसैन बात रहे हैं निजात ले जाओ। सल्लल्लाहु मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद।
محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي إليه مصائر الخلق وواقب الأمر. نحمده إحسانه ونير برهانه ونوام فضل امتنانه. حمدا يكون لحقه قضاء ولشكره أداء وإلى صوابه موجبا ولحسن مزيده مقربا. الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين راحة للعاشقين والمراد المشتاقين شمس العارفين والسراج السالكين. نبي है मिसबाह والعلم صاحب جود والكرم والله حافظه وجبرائيل خادمه والبراق مركبه سدرة المنتهى مقامه كعب قوسين محبوب رب المشرقين والمغربين جد الحسن والحسين مولانا ومولاي الثقلين أبو القاسم محمد صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في قرآنه الكريم وهو أصدق القائلين قوله الحق: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويطعمون على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وأسيرا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Before we begin, to all those of you sat here and to all those watching on the live stream, I got a message earlier, if nobody else, I know at least Ali Raza was watching. To all of you, congratulations on the Wilada of our second Imam, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wassalam. I won't take too long, mashallah. Iftar was good, and when iftar is good, it means there's not a long time left before you start to fall asleep, so I won't take too much of your time. I want to remember just a little bit about who our Imam was, how great he was, how incredible he was, because oftentimes when we remember the greatness of our Imams, we remember Sayyid al-Shuhada. We remember Amir al-Mu'mineen. In fact, I'd go so far as to say we give more reverence at times to Imam Ali Raza alayhi salam as well over our second Imam. Now, I'm not putting our Imams up against each other or comparing them, but each of our Imams has different lessons in their life for us to learn. Each of our Imams has different matters of brilliance that we can take from them. So we should never truly allow ourselves to leave one behind. We should never allow us to forget about the fadail of one Imam in favor of another. We must always make sure to remember each and every one of our A'immah. And so I turn to the place where eloquence reaches its peak. For if you want to remember the fadail of our Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, there's no better place to look than the words of Allah in the Holy Quran. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَىٰ حُبِّهِ. And they fed them out of their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, miskinan wa yatiman wa asira. It's a story many of you will be familiar with. I won't go into depth, but Imams Hassan and Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam were ill. And during this illness, Imam Ali alayhi salam and Bibi Fatima salamullahi alayha were told by our Holy Prophet, fast and make the intention of this fast a fast for the siha, for the health of your children. That doesn't sound good. So, that's much better in fact. Now, we see that these holy personalities were guided by the Holy Prophet. Keep a fast and make the intention of the fast that, for the sake of this fast, oh Allah Azza wa Jal, grant health to our two children, Imam Hassan Hussein alayhi salam. So they keep this fast. At the end of the first day, there's a knock at the door. As they're sitting down for their iftar, as they're sitting down getting ready to eat, there's a knock at the door. At the door, somebody's arrived. They say, I'm hungry, please. Can you feed me? I'm a miskeen. So Imam Ali alayhi salam gives away the food that they have for that day, left with very little. The second day, the same thing. They sit down for iftar, ready. Finally, after a long day, there's another knock at the door. This time it's an orphan, nothing to eat, has come to the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen, asks for something to eat. The third day, the same thing happens. A prisoner, he's arrived at the door and he asks for something to eat. We see here the generosity of the Ahlul Bayt. But we see more than just that as well. We see the way they act, the way that they work, the way that they did everything they did was in the same manner of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And the reason I say this is because as you continue in Surah Al-Insan, you see the verses that follow this verse say what? They say, and they do not ask for anything in return. They're not asking for something back. For their generosity, they don't want me and you to sit here and praise them. No, that's not why they do it. They don't want somebody to turn around and give them more food than they gave away. No, that's not why they did it. In fact, they did it out of their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And his love is a very important thing. In fact, when we look at the life of the Holy Prophet, we see a verse which is addressed to him. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says to our Holy Prophet, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا مَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. I ask of you nothing in return for what I have given you except love for my Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. First of all, let's look at Imam Hassan in the collective form of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Here, if you want to understand what this verse of the Holy Quran is telling us, the same way that the Ahlul Bayt, when they gave that food, they gave it without wanting anything in return, as it says in Surah Al-Insan. Here, this verse asks of nothing in return except for love for my Ahlul Bayt. قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا مَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. What does that tell you? Ajr, something in return, it has to be something of equal value, right? It has to be something which matches the value of what you have given. So let's say, for instance, if one of you is wearing a Rolex, I'm sure none of you are at the moment, but if one of you were, and I came to you and I said, look, I'll trade you for that Rolex. I really want it. The watch you've got on your wrist, I really want that watch. I'll trade you. You say, okay, what are you going to offer? I can give you this ring. You're going to look at me and say, look, it's a nice ring. I know it's an aqiq, but it's not worth the Rolex. Okay, I can give you this scarf. Again, it's a nice scarf, but it's not worth a Rolex. Why, right? Because the trade, it has to be of equal value. It has to match. Now, when Rasulullah is being told, say, I don't want anything from you in return for what? What did Rasulullah give the people that he could possibly ask for something in return for? Rasulullah brought the people the understanding of Tawheed. He brought the people the understanding of what the religion of Islam was. He brought the people nothing less than paradise itself and nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't ask for anything in return. إِلَّا مَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. Except for the love for your Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So if you look at the trade-off here that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling our Holy Prophet to make, He's saying don't trade the teachings of Islam and Tawheed that you have given for anything except for the love of your family, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam. Now we understand the value, the status, the maqam of our Ahlul Bayt, of the Ahlul Bayt of the Holy Prophet is what? It is equal to the level of the entirety of the teachings of Islam and Tawheed. Everything we have that we consider getting us closer to Allah subhanahu there's nothing that needs to be said there. Now, when we look at the brilliance of the Imam, it's not just enough to say he was brilliant. We have to understand what that brilliance was. The first element of his beauty and his brilliance that we see is from that verse of Surah Al-Insan, where the family give up their food. We realize and we recognize the generosity of our second Imam, Karima Ahl Bayt. Imam Hassan alayhi salam was known as the generous one amongst the Ahlul Bayt. Now imagine that. Amir al-Mu'mineen takes a sack on his back every single night and goes out into the streets of Kufa. Every single night he sits with those who are hungry. He doesn't just give them food, he sits with them, he spends time with them. If anybody wants something, they come to Amir al-Mu'mineen and he provides for them whether he has for himself or not. Sayyidah Zahra salamullahi alayha, how many young women how many young women did she educate, teach, grow? She gave them the lessons of life that they needed to live. When you look at Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, we look at everything that he gave and he sacrificed. There was nothing that he wasn't willing to do in his selflessness, in his commitment to his religion. And yet the generous one is known as Imam Hassan alayhi salam. That's not to say the rest weren't generous. As we've just said, they were all very generous, but Imam Hassan was known as Karima Ahl Bayt. His generosity is unmatched, unrivaled. The dastakhan of Imam Hassan is something that till this day we remember. Till this day we remember how Imam Hassan alayhi salam used to open up his doors. And it's a shame that in modern society we don't have the same kind of trend. I was in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania a few years ago, and I was visiting my friend and his father. I was seeing him for the first time. I hadn't met him before. We were in Dar es Salaam and we were talking about what Dar es Salaam's like, how it is. And he was telling me it's a lovely community, everyone's together and it's really good. And he said to me, there was a time where, you know, Zaki, if you had come to Dar es Salaam, I was staying in the Musafir Khana at the mosque at the time. He said there was a time, Zaki, if you had come to Dar es Salaam, even if nobody knew who you were, you're a random traveler. You came to Dar es Salaam, everyone would have opened their doors and welcomed you into their home. Everyone would have made sure that you have something to eat, something to drink, a place to stay. Everyone would have been happy to take care of you. Unfortunately, the world's taken a turn for the worse. We can't quite trust our fellow man as much as we did once. He says that wasn't too long ago. I think what a great world that must have been, where you could trust the people around you. Imam Hassan alayhi salam, he made sure if there was anybody who needed something, he would provide it. If there was a traveler traveling through the city, they would come to Imam Hassan alayhi salam's doorstep and they would ask him and he would give them. He would open up his doors and invite people to eat. In fact, he considered it an honor for himself to invite people to eat at his dastakhan. So much so that we have in the narrations a time where a man comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. The man is very hungry. He says to him, do you have anything for me? All I want is some food. Imam Ali alayhi salam brings forward the food that he has, and we all know how Imam Ali used to eat. Some pieces of hard bread, a bit of salt to go with it. Imam Ali places forward what he has. The man looks at it and he goes, what is this? How can I eat this? I can't eat this. The man, hungry himself, he looks at what Imam Ali has and he says, no, I can't eat that. So what does Imam Ali alayhi salam do? He says, fine. He takes it back. He says, go to this and this place. There, knock on the door, ask them, they'll give you a proper feast. They'll give you a banquet. You'll eat properly there. The man goes, he arrives, he enters the house, he sits down, he eats, he enjoys himself. And as he's eating, the host, he realizes this man, he's taking little bits of food. He's putting them in his bag. And the host says to the man, he says, look, I'm not going to stop you. Eat as much as you want. You don't have to hide it and take it away. You can eat as much as you want. That's fine. The man turns around to his host and he says, it's not for me really. The reason that I'm hiding this away is I saw a man sitting on the street. He was eating hard bread and salt. I want to take some food for him so he has something to eat. The host, he smiles. He says, do you know who that man is? The man says, I was told to go there if I was hungry. I don't know who he is. The man says, that is Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. That is the commander of the faithful. The man, he then turns around. He says, this is the commander of the faithful. This is the man who leads the Muslim world. His host tells him, yes. The man says, there's something very odd though. He says, what? He says, there's a great similarity between you and him. I see a great similarity between the two of you. His host smiles and says, why shouldn't there be? That man is my father. He is Ali and I am Hassan. See, Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This is the generosity of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and you can see where he gets it from. You can see where he learns it from. Oftentimes when we think of Imam Hassan, we think of this generosity. We think of things like the treaty that he had, Sulh Hassan. And we tend to think of Imam Hassan alayhi salam as quite a quiet person, quite a quiet individual, non-confrontational, quite relaxed. And he was relaxed, I'll tell you that. But don't think that my Imam was scared. Don't think that he was fearful of anything or anyone. No. The bravery of Imam Hassan alayhi salam is right up there with any of our other Imams. Oftentimes, we associate Imam Hussein alayhi salam with the bravery because of what he did in Karbala. We look at what happened in Karbala and we think, why did Imam Hassan alayhi salam not do that? Why did he not stand against Muawiyah in the same way? But when you actually zoom out and look at the lives of all of our A'immah, all of our 14 Ma'sumin, you realize what Imam Hussein alayhi salam did, that wasn't the norm, that wasn't the trend. It wasn't that everybody was doing what Imam Hussein did and Imam Hassan took a different path. No, look at all of our Imams. How many of them stood up and went to war? How many of our Imams actually made a qiyam of that nature? No, sulh, peace, diplomacy. This was the way of the Imams for the norm. Imam Hussein alayhi salam found himself in exceptional circumstances, so he changed the trend. But otherwise, the norm was the way that Imam Hassan alayhi salam handled things. But even still, when we look at that treaty, that Sulh Hassan, we tend to think of Imam Hassan alayhi salam as the quiet one. We think he wasn't the one who wanted to go to war. But if you actually look at the circumstances in which that treaty came about, the very first thing to note and the very first thing to understand is before that treaty actually happened, what was going on? When the people found out that Imam Hassan alayhi salam is going to go and sign a treaty with Muawiyah, what did they do? They turned around and went against him. They started accusing him. They said, no, he has left the faith now, a'udhu billah. He is going and he will be with Muawiyah. He is going and he will side with Muawiyah. He has left the faith, na'udhu billah. It's narrated at one point they took his janamaz, his musalla, and snatched it away from him. Because they thought, no, he is going to deal with Muawiyah. We mustn't let him. Imam Hassan alayhi salam comes out of his house. The people begin to attack him. They rush forward. To the point where Imam Hassan alayhi salam is stabbed in the thigh. And according to some narrations, he's struck in the neck as well. Now you tell me, if people came up against me and you and attacked us like that, if they were that vicious with us, if they came against us in that way, would we carry on and sign any peace treaty? No. We'd turn around, we'd say, no, this treaty is risking my life. But Imam Hassan alayhi salam, he was not afraid. We shouldn't think of him as a fearful person, no. If anything, he was fearsome. If anything, he was to be afraid of, because he stands forward, he goes out in front of those people and he still makes sure to do what he knows is right. And how did that come about? We know very famously Muawiyah sent a blank piece of paper. He sends a blank piece of paper to Imam Hassan alayhi salam and he says, look, whatever your conditions are, write them down. You don't give that level of authority to someone unless you recognize that they hold all the power, that they hold all the strength. And as I reach this point, might I say as well, might I mention, they tried to deny a piece of paper to Al-Mustafa in his deathbed. They tried to deny a paper from my Holy Prophet when he requested it. In the end, they were forced to give that very same blank piece of paper to Al-Mujtaba. But even today, they forget that to enforce the rules written on that piece of paper, Al-Muntadir is still in waiting. They forget to this day. They keep trying to deny what is rightfully the Ahlul Bayt, but they keep forgetting. One after the other, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam come until our Imam Al-Qa'im Al-Muntadar, and I won't spend long on this treaty. I spent quite a while already. I just want to look at the very first term of that treaty. What does Imam Hassan alayhi salam write? The very first term of the treaty is that he will transfer authority back to Muawiyah on one condition. On the condition that Muawiyah follows the laws of Islam, follows the Quran and the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Now you see, a treaty, a peace treaty in any situation, it's there to stop a war. And the conditions you put on that peace treaty are always to say, from what you are doing now, change to doing this instead. From what you are doing, this is the new thing, the new rule that you will have to follow. Which simply goes to show that until that point, the so-called leadership of the Islamic Ummah had not been following the Quran and the Sunnah of our Holy Prophet. Otherwise, there was no need for my Imam to put that in the treaty. And by signing that treaty, Muawiyah accepts, no, I've not been doing this, but from now on I must. Whether he did or didn't is a different matter, but he accepts that until now, I did not follow the religion of Islam, what it says in the Quran, nor the Sunnah. And you see, from here we realize the fragility of this concept of Isma. See, Isma is reserved only for a select few. There are only 14 ma'asumeen. Aside from them, the regular human being, the regular person cannot claim to have that level of purity. If you want to see the levels of purity of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, go and look at the Quran again. You're all very familiar with the verse, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. And to truly understand that verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He keeps rijs, impurity, away from the Ahlul Bayt, you have to understand what this medium of time looks like. For all of us, time takes a different scope. We have a different perspective on time. So for instance, for me, if you ask me to go to, I don't know, if you ask me to drive to Slough, for me that doesn't feel like a long drive. It's about an hour and a bit away. It doesn't feel like a long drive. But if you ask me to go from Tooting to Putney, all of a sudden I feel like, oh no, it's too long. I don't want to go Putney. Why? I can't tell you. It's just something in my mind. If you ask me to go from Tooting to Streatham, about 6 months ago, I'd have told you, yeah, that's fine. I'll go really quickly. Now, if you ask me, to me, that's a very long journey. Having to go through Erdley Road or Mitcham Eastfields or whichever way you go, it's a very long journey. But to you, that might seem like it's something really quick. It's a light journey. It's nothing difficult. The same amount of space and distance and time, it can feel like it's longer. I can tell you we're going to sit here and we're going to, I don't know, let's sit here and let's just all talk for an hour. That won't feel long. If I ask you to sit here and listen to me speak for an hour, all of a sudden that hour seems very long. It feels like it's going to drag. This concept of time is very subjective. To each and every one of you, time holds a different value. See, in the same way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Him and His apostles and His messengers have told us for so very, very long that the dhuhr of our Imam is very near. It's very near. For how long have they been telling us this? At least 1,000 years we've been hearing. The dhuhr is near. The dhuhr is near. From before the time where our Imam goes into ghaibah, we're being told the return is near. The qiyam is near. Qiyamah itself is near. 1,000 years later, it still hasn't arrived. Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if near to you is over 1,000 years away, when you say you keep rijs far away, how far must far be then? If near is over 1,000 years away, how far is far? When Allah says He keeps rijs far away from the Ahlul Bayt, understand, it's not like He keeps it a little distant away, no. There is no room for rijs to come anywhere around the Ahlul Bayt. In the same way, my Imam Hassan, he keeps this rijs away from him. It stays far from him. When we look at the life of our Imam, we see how he understands the level that he holds in comparison to what we call rijs, to what we call impurity. Others cannot claim it. People had tried to claim it, and there's a beautiful story of where Bibi Asma bint Umays, she comes to the Holy Prophet alongside one of her husbands who was a companion of the Holy Prophet. And she says to him, Ya Rasulullah, or rather he says to the Prophet, he says, Ya Rasulullah, my wife and I, we're having an argument, we're having a discussion, we want you to settle the debate. Rasulullah says, tell me, what is it? They say, between us, we cannot figure out who is afdal. I say, I am afdal, I am greater, I am your companion, I've stood alongside you in war, I've stood alongside you and helped you. She says, she is greater. She has served you, she has been a maid in your house, she has supported your family. They say, we cannot figure out between us, we cannot come to a conclusion as to who is greater. The Holy Prophet, he turns around and he says, Asma, you are the greater of this couple. Out of you and your husband, Asma, you are greater. The companion turns to Rasulullah and says, Ya Rasulullah, why? What do you mean? Now, I don't know about you, if it was me, if Rasulullah says something, I wouldn't turn around and question him, but I'm glad that this companion did, because we found out the reason. Rasulullah turns to him and he says, the reason that Asma is greater is because when Sayyidah Zahra went into labor at the time of the birth of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, Bibi Asma, she carried out the duties of a midwife. Bibi Asma was the midwife for the birth of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and for that reason she is greater than you. Now, I must say, when we try and bring the ashab, the companions, on the same level of the a'imma, on the same levels of those who hold isma, come and look at this hadith, come and look at this narration. You realize the midwife of Imam Hassan alayhi salam is higher in relation than this particular companion. Now, how can they consider themselves to be on the same level as the father of that same Hassan? How can they consider themselves to be on the same level of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam when they are not on the same level of the midwives who birthed them? Here we recognize the states of our Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. We recognize who they were. And as for their bravery, as for realizing that they weren't people to shy away, particularly Imam Hassan alayhi salam, the last narration I'll give before I complete the lecture is narration just to show that my Imam Hassan, for all his generosity and his kindness and his caringness and his gentleness, he was a brave warrior. He was a strong warrior. When we look at him around his family, we realize it again. It is the time of the Battle of Jamal. Imam Ali alayhi salam turns to his son Muhammad Hanafiya. He's preparing him. He's getting him ready. He says to him, Muhammad, and he gives him a great speech as he trains his son, the way a lion trains its child, its cub, to go and to hunt. The same way Imam Ali alayhi salam, he's training Muhammad Hanafiya. He says to his son Muhammad, go out towards the battlefield. And as you go, remember a few things from your father. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says, Muhammad, let the mountains move from their place, but whatever happens, you don't move from yours. When you march out there, plant your feet into the ground so much so that nothing can shake them. He says, when you look out over the battlefield, when you look out over the enemies, set your sights on the final row of their army, not on the first row, for that is where you have to reach. And before you go, sacrifice yourself and say to Allah, oh Allah, I give my head for you, and go with the intention that you will not return, for that is the intention that will grant you victory. Imam Ali gives a rousing speech. Any one of us, if we heard this from the mouth of Haydar Qarrar, any one of us would be enthused, any one of us would be brave, any one of us would be ready to go out into battlefield. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he pushes Muhammad Hanafiya forward. Muhammad Hanafiya steps forward and he looks up and he sees arrows raining down towards him. A barrage of arrows flying towards him. He takes a step back. Imam Ali alayhi salam steps forward, he pushes Muhammad Hanafiya forward again. Again, Muhammad Hanafiya, he stands there. Imam Ali can see the hesitation in his son. At this point, Imam Hassan Mujtaba, he comes out of the tent. He rides forward, takes a sword from the hand of Muhammad Hanafiya. As he goes forward, he begins to attack the armies. Muhammad Hanafiya at this point is visibly distraught, visibly upset. He turns towards his father. Imam Ali, before he says anything, before Hazrat Muhammad Hanafiya says anything to his father, he takes his son, he holds him in his arms, he holds him close. He says, Muhammad, don't worry. Don't worry. He knows what his son is thinking. His son is wondering, why is it that my older brother, Imam Hassan, is able to go? My brother Imam Hassan alayhi salam is able to go and fight, but I was too afraid. Hazrat Muhammad Hanafiya, he feels in this moment like he has failed. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he holds his son close and he says, Muhammad, don't worry. Hassan was able to go and fight. Why? Because he is the son of Rasulullah. You are my son. Hassan has the bravery of his grandfather, the Holy Prophet. You have the gentleness of your father Ali. We see here the whole dynamic flipped. We think of Rasulullah and Imam Hassan as the gentle souls, the non-confrontational ones. But it is Imam Ali alayhi salam and Imam Hussein alayhi salam who are the fighters and the warriors. Here in the Battle of Jamal, that entire dynamic is flipped. Rasulullah and his son Imam Hassan alayhi salam, they are the warriors, they are the brave, they are the fighters. Whereas Imam Ali alayhi salam and Muhammad Hanafiya appear gentle, appear the calmer of the group. And we see this theme of Imam Hassan being referred to as the son of our Prophet Muhammad again and again. So much so that our Holy Prophet says, Hassan from the waist upwards is the example of me. Hassan from the waist upwards is the mushabih of our Holy Prophet. What does that mean? Oftentimes your scholars will tell you from the waist upwards, you have the hands with which you can write the sulh, be it sulh Hudaybiyah or sulh Hassan. But I tell you, when you look at Imam Hassan alayhi salam, the way he walks, the way he talks, the way he speaks, the way he reaches, the way he does anything, you see the Holy Prophet within him. And maybe it's for that very reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down the name Hassan at the time of his birth. Hassan meaning beauty, meaning goodness. Never used before this name for any other child. Because for a child who will resemble the Holy Prophets, beauty is an absolute must. Beauty is an absolute must for anyone who wishes to resemble the Holy Prophet. It is up to us in the same way. Make sure we look presentable. Make sure we look good. We're the followers of Imam Hassan alayhi salam after all. So let's make sure that whatever we do, we have the gentleness but also the bravery. We have the generosity but also the strength and the strictness. And let's make sure that whatever we do, we're always those who can be proud to call ourselves the followers of Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wassalam. We raise our hands in dua and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, for all our ibadat in this holy month of Ramadan, accept them in your bargah. Oh Allah, for all those mu'mineen around the world suffering from ill health, grant them complete shifa. Oh Allah, for all those present, for all of their marhumeen, raise their ranks in Jannah. O Allah, hasten the reappearance of the Imam of our time. Allow us to enter Jannah under his banner. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع الدعاء.
For Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, salawat. Please join us tomorrow again, where we will start with Dua Iftitah and the regular Ramadan duas, followed by namaz, iftar, and then another speech by Sayyid Zaki Rizvi. Salawat.